Today's guest might be one of the only executive producers who can say he supervised thousands of ocean rescues before running seven-figure campaigns. He's worked across 20 plus countries, led massive creative teams, and helped brands turn big budgets into bigger impact. Tom, I'm so excited for this one. Welcome to Fully Managed.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So let's get into it. In your opinion, what separates a cinematic brand film from an expensive ad?
Story is king, and
Oh,
especially as consumers nowadays are smart, right?
yeah.
Especially with the amount of what can look expensive and what's just flashy. If there's not a great story behind whatever you're trying to say, it doesn't really matter. Or people will see right through it. Look at the Svedka ad at the Super
Yeah.
Bowl. That looked flashy, but it was awful. It was terrible. But people loved the Budweiser Clydesdale ad because that told a story. It appealed to human emotion, and I think appealing to the human side of everyone nowadays is probably the most important thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that. The story is the heart of it all. I feel like the soul, the thing that helps you connect with the human side of people, the emotional side. And what's one decision in pre-production that most people underestimate but can make or break a campaign, would you say?
Wow, that's a good question. One decision that can make or break a campaign. I think really understanding the North Star of what you're trying to accomplish, right? Having that solidified, we know exactly, we've pinpointed what we want this thing to do, be it generate revenue, generate leads, just general brand awareness, whatever it may be, just being aligned, the whole team aligned and getting a lot of the times it's really hard or
Yeah, imagine.
not hard, but a long part of the process is making sure the executives have the buy-in as well on whatever campaign or company you're working with. So, just having the whole team aligned and making sure that the ultimate decision makers are aligned too. The earlier you can get them involved and getting their sign off, the better your campaign will be, or at least the more efficient.
That makes sense. And when you walk into a new campaign, what's the first thing you try to understand about the client before touching creative?
Well, we really just try and learn about what our clients are trying to accomplish, right? And also, what have they been doing that has worked and hasn't worked for the past couple of years or the past couple of campaigns. So we're really trying to just figure out their goals, figure out who they are, figure out their story, and you know mix that all together in a beautiful pot of creative people and come up with a strategic plan that gets us that North Star, right? Um, Something we always are asking our clients is, at the end of this campaign, what do you want your audience to think, feel, share, and do? And so those four categories really drive a lot of what our creative strategy um, will hone in on. And then we'll ultimately, act on those four think, feel, share, do's to come up with a content plan or whatever the creative plan may be to try and accomplish the goals that we're trying to accomplish.
That's cool. That seems like a strong, solid structure. And in your opinion, what's a behind the scenes role in production that doesn't get enough credit?
Well, sorry for my emails.
Okay.
I'll give you a sec. Well, the production assistant is such an important role because they're always getting the last minute, oh crap, what was that? Or, what would be better? This, so having, we have some fantastic PAs that we work with across the US and they always have great attitudes and it's such a crucial role and it's so underappreciated. And, I started as a PA and I've worked my way up. And I think it's important too, like having people on your team that are willing to do that PA work too. Like I have plenty of times like my job today is done. You guys are still working. Like, does everyone here need a coffee? I got you. You know, people look like you were going to go get coffee. I'm like, absolutely. Like we're all a team here. You know, we got to keep the energy right. And you know, if you have downtime and you can help the team that needs help, by all means, why wouldn't you do that?
That's very cool. And shout out to them.
Amen. Yep, for sure.
You've led multi-million dollar campaigns and operated at the seven-figure level. When a production crosses into that range, what structurally changes? Is it creative freedom, margin for error, access to talent, production time? What really shifts, in your opinion?
Um, well, it really depends on what the campaign is, because and maybe campaign's not the right word, but you know, some events that we work on
Yeah.
hit that mark very easily because you know putting on an event can be expensive,
Yeah.
and that margin everything gets tighter because everything is centered around essentially what is like 60 minutes to 2 hours maybe on the stage for you know this seven figure moment. And then I've had other seven figure projects that have lasted, you know, a year and a half. And it's really nice to have that time to work through, you know, iterations of content. The one I'm thinking of was a 12 episode docu series. So that was a really nice long runway to sort of tell story throughout the year and destinations all across the world. So in that one, you've sort of got a little bit more flexibility because you've got the time and it's built in to the production schedule. But then when you've got something like an event, everything gets condensed and you've got to really be dialed in. And your PAs and everyone is very important because, you know, you are flying everyone to the location.
Yeah.
You've got 3 days to get this thing done. And the margin for error is so slim.
Yeah. And you've also, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, you've also managed campaigns that generated billions of impressions. When something actually takes off, what do you think is usually the real driver and what's overrated?
I think really it's just the story and being authentic, you know, just people can tell when a brand is really just not doing something for the you know for the good of it. Obviously we're all trying to accomplish some things here and usually there's some money involved, but I think people see right through all the shiny bullshit. So when something resonates with an audience base, you know, it will hopefully organically grow throughout that base and people will start, when you start to see the comment section, you know, going off and people are commenting on your talent on screen and whatever it may be, it's a really good feeling. And, you know, you're like, all right, we're really resonating with our audience here. And it's great to see. And a lot of the times, you know, working for our clients, sometimes we don't get that tangible feedback of like how many, sometimes we don't get the numbers back because, you know, that's their internal marketing team that handles all that stuff. And it's really nice when they do share that with us, just like, hey, here's a deck and, you know, 2 billion impressions here and all this ad money we didn't have to spend because it grew organically. So it's really great to see that. And I think partnerships are so important, and we're fortunate at Viva to work with a lot of clients year after year after year, project after project, and you know, texting basis with you know the C suites and all that. So having that level of comfort and partnership over the years really allows you to move fast and be dialed in on what you know they want. You know, so like an example comes to mind of, hey, can you have a shoot in Italy in 48 hours? And because I had worked with this client for a while, it's like, yep, I know what you need. I know the people to call. Like, we're going, you know, and we met
Oh
their
my God,
executive
that's
there.
crazy.
It was a wild 4 days, but we got it together. It was the height of COVID too. So, you know, travel was slower and all that stuff. But just sort of having that knowledge of what your client needs. And it just takes time. it really helps accomplish having those partnerships and having so many years together really can align the creative to make sure that the ultimate outcomes are being achieved.
And do you think that there's something overrated or no?
Something overrated in terms of
Like the something that drives that people think is the real driver, but it's just overrated.
oh yeah, I mean a lot of people are always like, oh, what camera are you shooting on? And it's like,
Oh, okay, interesting.
you know,
Interesting.
especially nowadays there are so many good cameras that it's mattering less and less. Obviously there is a certain level, your Airy line has a fantastic look, but when you get into sort of your FX9, FX6, C300, Black Magics, they all have their own look, but you're going to get a great picture out of all of them. If you don't have a good gaffer, you don't have good lighting, it doesn't really matter what you're shooting with. You got to have good light for sure.
I've heard that you can shoot like from your phone, some like
So, look at all of the influencer marketing that's going on nowadays.
Absolutely.
It's so easy. And I think you have to be doing both, because there's an insatiable appetite for content and entertainment.
Yeah.
And not everything can be a, 40-person crew or even a 5-person crew. Like you got to just send the person out there with a phone sometimes, just get the stuff done.
I love that.
Something we were just talking about the other day at work was reaction content. Like,
interesting.
It seems to just be this, not gold mine, but like really a nice way to keep your brand and your campaigns expanding. So, you make a nice video, right? And that's great. And that video can live in a couple different places. But then can you have someone have an influencer comment on that and sort of tell them what you think about your brand? So then their audience is seeing that. And then boom, you've expanded the base of this one video. And then can you also have people doing behind the scenes of that campaign or what they think about it? So there's just so many different ways to keep one video going nowadays with influencers, with the small little cameras that you can have on set. And I think audiences like to see that organicness of the people behind the content and the people behind the campaigns.
It's very interesting. And what's one thing you wish clients? I'm sorry, a motorcycle just passed. I don't know if you did.
Oh, good.
What's one thing you wish clients understood about the production process that would make everything smoother?
I think getting that executive buy-in earlier really helps.
Okay.
If you get executive buy-in early, you can really get into the granular, nuances of what you're trying to accomplish and really sort of iterate on the creative. And I understand people are trying to make their bosses happy, but sometimes you go down a path and then you ultimately show it to the executive and they're just like, I don't like this idea. Like this is, I don't know. And you've wasted a couple weeks of time, which time is everything.
Yeah, time is money. Absolutely. And I'm curious because you must have lived a lot of chaotic days in production.
Yep.
So I'm curious, what's the most chaotic production day you've ever had, and how did you manage it?
There's one day that sticks out. There was a 36-hour day, shuttling crew back and forth for a product launch. It was just 36 hours is just long. There's no way around it. You're walking 20, 30,000 steps and drinking endless espresso. So that one sticks out in my head. But then we had some really on that docu-series where we around the world. It was for a cruise company, and I don't know if those days were crazy, but we got to do a lot of really fun stuff. Since we were showing everything you could do on the cruises, we were eating great. We were going on all sorts of adventures, be it zip lines, 4-wheelers, hot springs, waterfalls through the rainforest. Like we did a scuba diving scene, and I remember, when that ship's leaving, and I just remember sprinting back, all of us with all of our gear, this crew of
Oh,
10 across the apron. The captain's on the ship because we had met him a few days before, and he's waving us on, and we're the last people on the ship. We made it, but there are definitely those days where you're just sweating. Are we going to make it back to the ship? Are we getting everything we need? Because you don't get to come back to this location again. You get one shot, and you don't really get to scout it either. You're just like, this place is what it is, and we've got to make this happen, and we've got 25 minutes. So those are fun, and they keep on your toes for sure.
and did you get to scuba
Oh,
dive?
yes. Yeah, it's in Cyprus. There's an underwater sculpture garden that is very cool, very powerful message. I would highly recommend, if you end up in Cyprus, take a dip for sure.
And was it the first time that you recorded there underwater?
I've, part of my lifeguard training from pre-production days had me in the water a lot, so very comfortable in the water. This was the first time taking anything past a GoPro down, so it was nice to go R5 down into housing and just spend a half hour with our host, who was also scuba certified, exploring this sculpture garden. Really powerful message of this garden with kids essentially pointing video cameras, sort of like weapons, at the adults down there. Hey, we're watching you. We're watching what you're doing. We're watching the world that you're leaving for us. So it's, it was a powerful message for sure.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I want to see this video. Please send it over after this.
For sure.
And continuing that thread of your pre-production days, and you spent years leading first responders on the beach, overseeing thousands of open ocean rescues, real life or death situations. So I'm curious if that experience shaped the way you handle high pressure.
Absolutely. There's no way around it. When I originally tried out for the Beach Patrol in Ocean City, Maryland, it was, just wanted to have fun one summer, and then you get 3 weeks in, and you've gotten your training, and maybe you've made a rescue, and maybe there's been, a real emergency, and you kind of realize this is no joke. And then I ended up spending 11 years there, working my way through the ranks and really understanding what an amazing organization it was, really, really doing a lot of good. The slogan is "Only God saves more people than the Ocean City, Maryland Beach Patrol," which is a fun slogan, but obviously not true. But they're making 2,000 to 4,000 rescues a summer there in what is essentially 16 weeks of summer. So in doing that over the years really helps you stay calm under pressure, teaches you discipline, especially in production. Be on time. It's a very simple thing, but be on time. On Beach Patrol, if you were late twice, you're gone. But, we don't need you. If you're late and someone dies and because you weren't there for 2 minutes,
Whoa.
Can't have that. You just can't have that. So fantastic experience, great friends, and really good memories.
Oh, that's cool. I love how everything, some way or the other, ties together. Who would have known that pre-production you would sort of benefit so much of all the things you learned in that space. It's crazy how everything connects.
And that, just part of life, have experiences, learn from them, and apply what you learn to the next thing. And
absolutely,
be nice to people.
Yeah, be kind. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with teams of 4 to 20 creatives, depending on you, how do you personally stay organized? Are you a systems person, a delegation person, a gut instinct person?
Definitely a systems person. We've got our production book, we've got our production creative decks, and sort of those two things become the Bible of the things that we're working on. And then the older I get, the more I'm just trust my gut. I think this is good. And also I'm a big proponent for sharing work that's in progress. Hey, are we going down the right path here? And that goes back to the partnership and, we want our clients to have open dialogue with us all the time. Call, text me anytime. Let's look at stuff. Let's iterate. It doesn't always need to be this perfect little buttoned up thing. And I think that helps save time a lot of the time, because you can get feedback quicker with like, hey, are we going down the right path? Great. It's not done. Of course we're going to make this better, but we want to make sure that the blue is the blue and the red is the red, or whatever it might be.
I love that. You've led creative teams of up to 20 people remotely. Do you have a non-negotiable rule for high-performing teams?
No, I don't think there's any hard and fast rules. I think just good communication. Keep your files organized. Keep your versions organized. That's really it. I think the blend of everyone's different experiences and styles of working really is what lands you to a great creative output a lot of the time.
That's a very great way of seeing this.
Yeah, it happened just the other day. Like, I showed a animatic in progress, and there was a line about it being dark, and we had a little bit of horizon in the shot, and I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, it should be all sky and this. And I'm like, great. It was an early animatic. We're not in full motion yet, but I'm glad that people weighed in on something that I just, overlooked because I was maybe working too fast. Okay. So, and easy update.
And you've also mentored 14 plus junior creatives. What's the one skill young producers think matter, but actually doesn't?
Ooh, good question. I think sometimes the delegation of tasks doesn't matter quite as much. It goes back to what I said earlier about, like, if your producer has time to go PA a quick errand because they've gotten their part done, then fantastic. Of course, there's a hierarchy, and you're going to try and follow, the chain of command, so be it. But really, we're all on the same team trying to accomplish a goal. So, if you have an idea, speak up, and, listen to your superiors for sure, and be flexible enough to iterate with your team all the time. Like, I don't think it's just like, hey, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, don't be too strict. Like, your teams shouldn't be too strict. Yeah.
Okay. And was there a production mistake early in your career that fundamentally changed how you lead today?
I wouldn't say fundamentally changed, but one that sticks out, and it was a very, very simple one. Bad wardrobe, but we shot this whole video 2 or 3 days long. Car scene, airport scene. It was a decent production. And my talent was wearing jeans, and this client, you weren't allowed to wear jeans. You had to wear skirts. So she's in our talent was in jeans in every shot. So not every shot, but we had to reshoot a lot. So, I just make sure that in our creative decks that, so production book and creative deck, those two things become our Bible. We make sure we lay out very clearly what everyone will be wearing on camera for sure.
Okay. And is there a part of production that you still personally obsess over, even though you technically don't have to anymore?
Sometimes, like, final color. I would love to spend more time looking at final color of stuff, but sometimes it's so iterative, and it's just like, okay, we got to get this done. I think sometimes that the exact focus of some shots as well. Is that really in focus? Really, I can weigh on a lot. Do we have another take of that where, like, I think his eye was better in focus? Those two things for some reason stick out to me.
That's interesting. And before I let you go, I always love asking this because I really believe that throughout our careers, there's usually someone who's impacted us in a meaningful way. So is there someone outside of your family, of course, who had that kind of impact on you?
Yeah, probably a bunch of people, There's been a handful of sergeants at the beach patrol who have become great friends, and they were mentors to me. And a handful of creatives who I looked up to early in my career, was just like really impressed by what they were doing, how they worked, how they kept cool, and how they talked to the clients about their ideas, and ultimately, getting those things into production and through the finish line. So yeah, a guy John, a guy Ted, a guy Toops, a guy Ray and Mike and Todd. Yeah, lots of really, really good people. Allie, Lemmy. There's been a lot of really special people to work with over the years.
That's beautiful.
And I think it's one of the best parts of what we get to do is work with awesome people. You get to meet so many people in production, and everyone has a great attitude trying to get whatever they're done. It's a really fun place to be.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. Because everything is more fun if you do it, collaboratively.
For sure. Sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tom. It's been really cool to get to pick your brain, and video production is something it's very alien to me. So I'm glad I got to learn a bit from you this afternoon. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let's set this up on a real set soon. We can do this for real. With some camera. We can do a real shoot if you want to.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.